Today's episode is supported by AIDS-Free Pittsburgh. There are more than 5,000 people living with HIV in southwestern Pennsylvania, and the Ryan White HIV/AIDS program provides support services to help them get the care they need. That includes assistance with things like healthcare, medications, housing, transportation, food, and treatment for substance use disorders. Visit aidsfreepittsburgh.org to learn more.
Today's show is supported by TaskRabbit. You know, as Pittsburghers, we have a strong work ethic, but sometimes we all need a little bit of help. If you're looking for someone to help you assemble some furniture, maybe start a home repair, TaskRabbit is here for you. You just download the TaskRabbit app, describe what you need, and you'll get matched with a skilled tasker. Maybe even one of your neighbors. It could be a great way to meet people. They'll pitch in, and there are no surprises because pricing is right there before you book. Download the TaskRabbit app or visit taskrabbit.com today to get those home to-dos crossed off. This is CityCast Pittsburgh. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. Everyone in Pittsburgh knows that company is coming over soon, and they're not going to know how to zipper merge. I mean, so many people in Pittsburgh don't understand it either, but we want to set a good example for our visitors. So today we're bringing back a conversation about the 12 essential rules for driving here in the city, debating the efficacy of a Pittsburgh left, and even sharing a few tips for getting around another way, by foot or by bike, because we all know that need is coming. So driving here in Pittsburgh can be such a challenge. And today we're talking about some unofficial rules to help you not lose your mind behind the wheel. I'm with CityCast Pittsburgh's Mallory Falk. Good morning.
Good morning.
And friend of the pod, Jacob Lazaro. Welcome to CityCast.
Hello. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
I feel like you're part of the squad because in addition to driving for Uber here in Pittsburgh, you are also producer Sophia Lowe's partner, a.k.a. live-in chauffeur. So
That's right.
We see you out and about quite a lot. As a somewhat recent Pittsburgh transplant, Boomerang, maybe you were here before too, I know. What's the biggest thing you think you've noticed that's maybe uniquely weird about our city's driving culture? Give us like a tease of what to expect.
Yeah. So, and then I'll just say first, I'm a former Uber driver. I quit because Uber stopped paying so well. So for all of you Uber passengers out there, tip your Uber drivers because they're still doing it. They really need it. But I'd say the biggest thing I noticed, honestly, in Pittsburgh, obviously, the white lines here at a lot of intersections in the city are way, way, way back from the intersection. Mm-hmm. You know, when you're driving up, you get that line on the ground. It's like, here's where you have to stop.
It feels fake because you're so far away from the stoplight, depending on where it is.
But you need to stop at those lines because the reason they're all the way back there is so many of the streets here are narrow and old because it's a, cool old city, or they're at weird angles and the lines are set so far back or they're on a hill. So people coming around the corner, whether they're a car, but especially if they're a truck or a bus, can actually make the turn. So that is, I'd say, the biggest thing I've noticed, because if you drive around here long enough, after a few days, you're like, okay, I need to stop at the white lines because maybe you didn't one time and then a bus came around the corner, you had to back up. Very embarrassing. Never happened to me.
There's that eye contact moment where you're just so uncomfortable and now you need to back up, which means like 7 cars have to back up. Everything stops. It's wild. Yeah.
Well, this is a perfect example of what we're going to be talking about on the show today, because we are here to provide you with some essential tips, tricks, and rules for getting around Pittsburgh, especially for navigating the city in a car. So it sounds like rule number 1 is to always stop behind the white lines at intersections, not just for your own safety, but also to prevent embarrassment. Something I heard from a listener once is that in general, driving in Pittsburgh is like driving on hard mode. And I'm curious what you two think about that.
I think it's relatively accurate. There's definitely a lot of things about driving in Pittsburgh that are for sure hard. Is it the hardest place in the world to ever drive? Probably not. I'd say that's probably like the highway that goes to like the top of Alaska that like the ice road truckers drive on or whatever. But
wow, way to one up us.
That's not to say driving in Pittsburgh is easy. I think it's definitely more complicated, harder than driving somewhere like, Phoenix, where it's flat and clearly designed around the automobile. Pittsburgh was obviously not, which is one of the things that I love about the city. It's designed to be a walkable urban place because it's so old. And, that's going to make driving harder in some aspects. And of course, the hills, they don't really help with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's central to this conversation, right? Is the reasons why driving is so hard in Pittsburgh. So like you say, Jacob, we've got the topography, steep hills, narrow streets. If you take a wrong turn, you can end up like inadvertently crossing a river or getting in a part of the city that you are not familiar with, have no idea how to get out of. It can just take a lot of extra time, a lot of extra mileage. And of course, there's also severe weather here.
Right.
So streets might flood, or it's just the time of year that they are covered in potholes. And if you don't know what you're doing, it can be really difficult to get around. And I feel like we've all lived here for a minute now. We know to look out for this stuff. But if you don't, it can get kind of dicey.
The amount of last minute merging where you have like 2 seconds of lead time to get over to your exit lane is the thing I find most stressful about driving in Pittsburgh. I don't know if you've seen that meme that has an image of the Fort Pitt Bridge that says left lanes need to exit right lanes need to exit left. Here's 300 feet, make it happen. I remember the first time I saw that, I just felt it in my soul.
Yeah, for sure. I would say my strategy for dealing with the crazy merges like on the Fort Duquesne bridges where you have to cut across like 4 lanes is I just kind of go into it knowing that basically everyone's trying to do this, and I just kind of drive at people and they'll let you in because no one really wants to get their car ran into. If you're assertive, it works out great. I do say I never have to really go this way because I live on the other side of the East End, but I make sure to avoid that one stop sign on ramp right before the Squirrel Hill Tunnel when you're heading out of the city, because I just don't want to deal with that unless it's like, the middle of the night. Then I might consider it.
If you're confident, you can like get over on the lane and then get back over, but you really got to like be ready for that. And on the bridges, I would say you just have to zipper. Like if you stop, if you wait in line politely, you are part of the problem. You have to be ready to like go around all of that and zipper in, and then everything goes so much smoother.
I think we've got our rule number 2 here, essential rule number 2, which is be an assertive driver, especially on a bridge. This is hard for me because I'm not an assertive person, and I also
Mallory
have a
is
fear
our
of
peacekeeper.
driving on bridges. Yeah. So my fear is I try to merge, I get too aggressive, and then I end up in the water. But Jacob, I will keep this strategy in mind.
Luckily, they have railings most of the time, so hopefully you just hit the railing instead. You wouldn't go all the way over.
Intellectually, I understand, but this is my deepest fear, which means I probably live in the wrong city.
Yeah.
Jacob, I actually found some good reporting from your colleague, Katie Blackley at WESA, about how Pittsburgh ended up this way with these stressful driving situations and why we don't have a traditional grid design. Part of it is because a lot of neighborhoods used to be their own towns or boroughs that eventually got annexed into Pittsburgh. So there was just a lot of piecemeal development instead of one grand vision for the entire city and one giant grid. And then there's also that pesky topography we've been talking about. When you've got all of these hills and river valleys, you just can't create a clear grid because nothing is in a straight line.
Yeah, I mean, we are a city on a triangle, and I think that has inherent challenges. But yeah, I mean, I remember like Katie specifically looked at Oakland and how a bunch of streets are built into hills. So they end up kind of shifting to follow those slopes. You can't just run cleanly perpendicular to Fifth. And so you end up with these like confused, disjointed routes. And I think that's true of a bunch of places all over the city.
Yeah. And then, Jacob, you mentioned kind of our issue of being just like an old city with streets that weren't necessarily built for cars.
So narrow.
Yeah, for sure. I think you especially see that in like the South Side flats where the streets are really narrow, or Mount Washington where people park up on the sidewalks, which I know is a whole other different controversy. We don't have to get into that, but just one example there.
Too many complaints about transit in Pittsburgh for one show. But yeah, I mean, so we've got these narrow streets that were designed for cars. And then also like a lot of the highways here were built a while ago before cars could go as fast as they do now. And also at a time when there weren't as many standards for highways. So, there are other cities and regions in the U.S. that were designed to be more car-centric, more driver-friendly. And I'm with you, Jacob. I like that our city isn't designed that way.
Same.
I've lived and spent a lot of time in the Southwest in places where it feels impossible to get around without a car. I'm glad Pittsburgh isn't like that, but it does just make driving here a little scarier and a little more challenging than a place that was built for cars going 80 miles an hour.
Yeah. And I mean, it can be challenging still, even if you don't have a car, but we'll save all that for a future show.
I'm just saying it's more walkable than some cities. I'm not saying it's the gold standard of walkability.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess all of that is the why it can suck to drive here in Pittsburgh. But let's get to more of these rules that make it easier, a little bit easier to deal with. Mallory, I think you've got rule number 3?
Yes. So rule number 3, do not bother learning the official names of, roads, tunnels, and the like, because nobody uses them. You have to learn the colloquial names. So Interstate 376 is the parkway. The Liberty tunnels are the tubes. Like, if you want to understand directions, you got to know these terms.
My favorite one in Pittsburgh is the bathtub. Like, if you've lived here for 10 minutes, you know what that is.
Good, yeah.
But it's like nobody else does. Like, it's just not clear, which, by the way, it's that merge point on the Parkway East, right downtown, that floods every time the Mon River is high.
Didn't they get some federal money to fix the flooding? So maybe it won't be the bathtub anymore in a while. I thought I'd heard that.
I mean, it's Pittsburgh, so that's going to be the bathtub until at least 2 generations from now.
That's going to be the bathtub until Pittsburgh no longer exists.
Well, I'm going to shift to one that I learned the hard way when I first moved here. So rule number 4, do not rely on directions from locals, because they will give you those directions based on landmarks that do not exist anymore.
100% true.
I am in the news business, of course, but I remember when I first got here, I told a colleague where I was going to the gym, and she replied with, "Oh yeah, that's over there where they had that triple homicide." And then
Megan, I think that's more a journalist thing than a Pittsburgh thing.
It absolutely is. It's a morose example, but she and 2 other people, neither of which ever covered crime, just sit there and like chat casually about that, every grisly detail, before they remembered that I was standing there. And then they were like, "Oh yeah, and what are you doing over there? Like, what kind of exercise do you like?" It's gallows humor, like standard in the news business, but still, like, that one stuck out, and it's very indicative of how old school Pittsburghers talk.
It's really the way you can tell whether somebody goes back 5 generations in Pittsburgh or not. There's actually this great episode of the design podcast 99% Invisible about this phenomenon, and it's called UTBAF, which stands for used to be a Pizza Hut. So the episode is mostly about how you can always tell if a building used to be a Pizza Hut, even if it went out of business and got repurposed as something else, because the architecture is so distinctive. But it all starts with this comedy routine about needing to make a GPS plugin that gives directions in Pittsburghese.
Oh, wow.
So it would be like, take the parkway and turn left at the place that used to be a Pizza Hut. And if you go past where the Swissvale High School used to be, you have gone too far.
Now I'm thinking about all the places that probably used to be Pizza Huts that I've gone past, because I do notice it's that really distinctive roof, I think, is what gives them away.
But paradoxically, rule number 5 is, don't rely too much on your GPS. I feel like the technology has improved, but every once in a while I still get a driving route fed to me that includes a set of city steps, because technically some of them are still labeled as streets. Or say, if you go to one of the games on the North Shore, there's so many layers of roads stacked on top of each other that if you don't kind of know which direction to point your car to start moving so that it can trigger the system, it could think you're on any number of roads before it figures out exactly how to get you where you need to go.
Okay, so Jacob, I'm curious, because you used to drive for Uber, we just gave 2 rules that are not really helpful together. You can't rely on directions from humans and you can't rely on directions from your GPS. How did you figure out how to get around? Do you have any tips for our listeners that might be helpful?
Yeah, so I will say I'm going to break the previous rule, which is that, when I was driving people around for Uber, I did pretty exclusively rely on the Uber GPS. But I'd say outside of that, I have a pretty good sense of direction, geography, sense of place, what have you. And I've looked at the city of Pittsburgh on maps a fair amount to sort of give myself a mental picture of where I am. It really helps me to get a sense of where you are, where other stuff is. And when you have done that enough, you'll notice that a lot of the times the GPS will recommend you stuff that doesn't necessarily make sense. It might be 1 minute faster, but it's going to give you more of a headache. I'm thinking stuff like, okay, you need to get over from Forbes in Oakland to Center Avenue or whatever. GPS will often tell you to drive through the light, which is by the Cathedral of Learning, and then make the next immediate left where there's no light, which, depending on how much traffic, could really annoy you. Go up that street. I'm blanking on the names of these 2 streets, but they run parallel to each other. Get up to Center Avenue.
At least you're telling us where to go based on landmarks that are currently there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. That's true. But it'll have you go up to Center Avenue and then make a turn or go straight across the street with no light or stop sign or anything. And that is a lot more frustrating to me than just maybe it takes an extra 30 seconds because I have to sit through 2 lights. Mm-hmm. But I feel like if you have a good sense of direction or develop good sense of direction, study the maps of your local area, and just think about when you're driving, okay, the GPS wants me to go this way, but knowing the layout of the city, right? I could probably go this way, and it might take a little longer. It might take the same amount of time, but it's definitely going to be a less frustrating experience for sure.
I do think that Pittsburgh benefits tremendously from just taking a second to review the route it has suggested instead of just taking it on faith that it will work for exactly the reason you say, Jacob, just stepping back and being do all these zigzags make sense for my brain and how I like to traverse the city? Because oftentimes you'll be that may save me a minute, but I can also just take a highway because that's what I prefer and there's less thinking involved. Or I can avoid these extremely steep streets that maybe aren't a thing I want to drive on this time of year or in these conditions.
So rule number 6, before you trust the GPS, just take a beat, take a breath, look at a map, and figure out what the actual best route is.
Yeah. If you have a little familiarity going in, I think that can really help you, maybe second guess the GPS.
Yeah. CityCast Pittsburgh is brought to you today by Allegheny County. The county is recruiting poll workers, such an important job for the May 19th primary election. Poll workers, also called election officers, help run voting locations, and they earn money, $150 to $175 for the day, plus paid training before Election Day. Training can be in person or online, and new poll workers must complete it before working on Election Day. To serve, you must be a registered voter here in Allegheny County and be able to work the full day on May 19th. Poll workers play an important role in ensuring a smooth, fair election, and they gain valuable experience interacting with voters and managing the election process. If you're interested in earning a little extra money and supporting your community, apply online at AlleghenyVotes.com. Learn more and submit your application at AlleghenyVotes.com today. Today's episode is brought to you by Steal Hers Social, presented by UPMC Magee Women's Hospital. Y'all know, if you listen to the show, I am a huge sports fan. I am always down to chat with women who love football, who love the Steelers, just because, first of all, y'all have such strong opinions and you make them heard in male-dominated spaces. So if you're looking for that kind of community, mark your calendars for Steal Hers Social on May 28th. It's taking place at, of course, Acrisure Stadium, and you'll get the chance to peek into the locker room and run through the player tunnel, get access to all these behind-the-scenes spaces. There's even a player meet and greet and an opportunity to hear from women in sports. They've got raffles, giveaways, face painting, bingo. If you like to get crafty, make sure you stop by that button and bracelet making station. The event is open to women and girls of all ages, and as a CityCast listener, you get a $5 discount on the $55 ticket. Use code CITY, C-I-T-Y, and buy your tickets now at universe.com/stealhers. That's steal, H-E-R-S. CityCast Pittsburgh is sponsored today by Window Nation. If you're a regular CityCast Pittsburgh listener, then you know we have been absolutely delighted by Pittsburgh spring. It is so nice to see the trees turn green, get that afternoon breeze. It's been such a long winter. But to really make the most of this season, you probably want some nice windows. Maybe yours get stuck. Maybe they are starting to leak. Maybe you just want a refresh. Window Nation's running their The More You Buy, The More You Save sale, which could save you up to 50% off all the windows for your home, along with 0% financing for 5 years. When you buy with Window Nation, you get to pick from over 1,500 styles and colors, dang. And they're all custom built. They come out to measure your windows so they fit right the first time, and the installation crews are truly professionals. The crew leaders have over a decade of experience, and the installation all happens in one day. And if anything does end up going wrong, you are protected with a lifetime warranty. So hurry, the sale ends soon. Schedule a fast, free consultation now at windownation.com. Well, rule number 7 is short and sweet. If you are nervous about navigating the city, build in extra time in case you take a wrong turn, because it can take a long time sometimes to get back on track, especially if your, travail took you across a river or through a tunnel, or any parkway is involved, because then you have to wait for an exit. You got to watch out for those.
And then speaking of time, rule number 8 has to be to never expect your driving directions in miles, always in minutes, because getting around the construction and the hills and the rivers and the traffic, something might be 2 miles from you, but take 20 minutes by car. So don't trust the mileage.
Yeah. Rule number 9, something that I feel like some of us see, but we don't talk about or like use as much in the modern era is the belt system. I think this is just worthy of like familiarizing ourselves. Jacob, I'm curious if you even noticed it when you first moved here.
I definitely noticed it because you'd be driving along and you'd see these signs like blue belt, turn here, orange
And
belt,
the
whatever.
big bright circle,
Yeah,
like
with
it's a
the big
ski
bright
slope or
circle.
something.
Although, let's be honest, a lot of them have a pretty faded circle at this point.
True. Honestly, these are not the best kept up signs.
Yeah, my honest reaction was, what's the deal with all these? So I went and I Googled like belt system Pittsburgh or something like that. And then you get the Wikipedia article about it. And it's like, oh, okay. So I understand this a bit more, but I never feel the need to use it.
Yeah. And just by way of history, going back to WESA here and also a 2004 City Paper article by Don Patton, the Beltway system was like originally meant to relieve congestion, to keep people from having to go downtown if they didn't want to. So you could follow one of the Beltways and bypass the whole Golden Triangle. They actually weren't specialty built roads or anything. They were just labeled routes for people to follow.
Yeah, and then I believe once the Parkway, the other highways were built in the 50s and 60s, they weren't really the most efficient way to get around anymore. I guess in some cases they could be. Like, let's say you got to go from one side of the South Hills to the other. The belt system might be helpful in that way. But now you're just going to plug your destination into Google Maps and follow where it tells you. And they're just kind of a relic now. You could follow them if you want. I personally never pay attention to them beyond, oh, yeah, it's one of those signs again. That's interesting. That's pretty much it.
So I guess then rule number 9 is don't worry about the belt system. You can just disregard those signs, unless you want to do something like travel all the beltways and power rank them, maybe for an episode of CityCast Pittsburgh.
You are on your own, Mallory. I sort of did that for that WESA story back in the day. The belts are confusing as hell, and I did not enjoy it at all.
Fair. Okay, well, now we're up to rule number 10, which is possibly the most important rule. Beware the Pittsburgh left. This is where, when the light turns green, one driver gets to take a left turn before the oncoming traffic starts. Jacob, I'm curious your thoughts on the Pittsburgh left, because I know Megan has a longstanding theory.
I get why people do it. I mean, if you're on a street that only has 2 lanes and there's like one person at the front who needs to make a left turn, I feel like it's kind of polite for the people going the other way to let them through so they don't hold up traffic through the entire light cycle, because that's pretty annoying. You can't just like take it, because if you do that, people are going to maybe crash into you. I feel like it's a thing that is, it's partially has to be given and partially has to be taken. I've definitely taken a few Pittsburgh lefts. I've definitely flashed my lights at some people to be like, to
give
ahead.
it away. Yeah. That's my theory, is that I think that this is like the most crucial Pittsburgh personality test, is whether you give them or you think you take them. Because I think you learn so much about people when you hear like how they navigate this very specific transit challenge.
But also, it goes back to that thing of being assertive, because if someone flashes their brights at you and you hesitate too long, they might just,
they're
be
just
like,
going to
well,
go.
forget
Yeah,
it. I'm not going to sit here for 30 seconds for you to make up your mind, right?
Yeah, a gift was offered and it wasn't accepted, and that's okay.
I also think it's just so important to, like, anyone who's new, anyone who's visiting, give them the heads up
that this exists.
This exists. I am from here. My husband is not. And when we moved back here, I forgot to tell him about the Pittsburgh left. And he would come home every day like, I almost just got in 4 crashes. I don't understand. How do people in the city drive? And I realized it's because he was not familiar with the concept of the Pittsburgh left.
Well, so a couple more important rules. We'll run through them really quickly. Number 11, there are certain roads in this town that you should probably just try to avoid at certain times of the day. And also other ones that you can probably try to avoid during inclement weather. So to start with the weather part first, like if it is a tiny road in a residential area that's not likely to get treated, consider whether you actually want to drive on that if it's like snowing outside.
Mm-hmm.
Or a steep road, too.
Yeah, or steep. Anything that's going to be slick. I feel like that has burned me so many times, is looking at a GPS route and being like, oh, that's the quickest one. I would take it on a sunny day, no problem. But it's snowing or it's like a really quick rainstorm or something. And like, it's just not pleasant to drive, on streets like that when you have to do it extremely slowly and you're kind of scared the whole time.
I think an example of a busier road that fits that category would be Rialto Street up to Troy Hill. Although I think the city actually blocks that off now when it gets too icy.
They should. I don't feel like that one's a safe one. Rialto is an extreme all to itself. If you're not familiar, it's the one that you can see off of 28 that goes straight uphill as if it was an escalator.
Yeah, and I mean, another one to watch for during inclement weather is Washington Boulevard, like where it intersects with Allegheny River Boulevard, which you used to be able to drive there when there were intense floods. And then I think actually there was some tragedies there. So now that can actually get blocked off when there's a lot of rain, when the area floods. So just beware that you actually can't take that route and may need to find another way to get around when there's really heavy rain.
Yeah. And then, of course, the heavy hitters for like just rush hour traffic, 28, 51, 65, Balm, Bigelow, Penn. We could go all over the city in terms of like roads that are just a little dicier if you're going to be traveling them between like 3:30 and 5:30.
I would actually say that, in my opinion, it's always better to take Balm than Center Avenue, because Center Avenue has more places you can get stuck in terms of just like traffic lights.
Yeah. Well, Center has got all those stoplights
Yeah.
and then people park on the street, but then don't. Center's tough.
Although I don't drive down Balm Boulevard during rush hour, so maybe it's horrible during rush hour. Who's to say?
I think the actual issue is there's no good route in that part of the city during rush hour.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 12, parking can be a challenge. Jacob, I feel like this is maybe your time to shine.
Yeah, so I mean, I never really have any trouble with parking, but this is for two reasons. One, I think the places where people complain about parking all the time are downtown and Oakland. And if I'm going to downtown and Oakland, I just take the bus because I don't want to deal with that. If you
Smart.
need to park downtown, there's a lot of garages. I don't know if there's a lot of garages in Oakland. There probably are, but you got options. You're just going to be spending that money. But outside of that, everywhere else in the city, all the meters generally, but not always, shut off at 6 p.m., which is helpful if you're going out for dinner or something and you want to park on the street.
Not on the south side, not anymore. But yes, usually.
Not on the south side. And I think now on Butler Street, they might have some that are
I think you're right.
longer. But outside of those areas, I think generally it's they shut off at 6 p.m. and they're off completely on Sundays. So that's helpful if you're out on the weekend as well. Also, if you're willing to walk a few blocks, or if you're willing to walk a few blocks up or downhill, and you're going to a place where people complain about parking, like, oh, it's so hard to park in Lawrenceville or whatever. If you're willing to park, halfway up the hill or at the top of the hill, like towards Bloomfield, there's a lot more residential street parking. It's all zoned, of course, so you'll have to, move your car after a few hours, unless you want to risk a ticket.
Mm-hmm. This is not the kind of spot that you can abandon your car in if you end up like needing to take an Uber home.
Yeah.
Okay, so related, this is less of a rule, but more of a thing you should know when it comes to parking, which is what to do if you get a ticket.
Yeah, look at what kind of ticket, like physical ticket, like piece of paper you get on your car. So if you have parked somewhere where there's a meter and the time ran out, that's the Pittsburgh Parking Authority. They almost always will leave a little ticket on your car. It's usually got like that pink color on it. Those are easy. You can literally pay them from your phone the moment you have received one, right there in the car. But if you get one where there was not a meter, like say you've parked like it wasn't a metered space, it was a parking lot and you're like blocking someone, that's usually the Pittsburgh police. And sometimes they will leave a ticket on your car, like those carbon fiber pieces of paper. But if your car is titled in another state, like say you're a student or you just moved here and you haven't like switched your driver's license and all that yet, they will mail the ticket to you. So this is one of those where like if your parents still receive your mail, you need to make sure that like you've checked that. Like if you've parked in a dicey situation, maybe let whoever receives your mail know, because those fees can add up so fast. I once had a $20 ticket that by the time I even knew it existed was $130.
Whoa.
It's just a huge nightmare. So just always pay your parking tickets really, really fast if you're one to play fast and loose with those meters.
Okay, and then last, if your car gets towed, it is probably going to McGann and Chester. That is the big company that the city contracts with.
Yeah, they're enormous. Like where they impound everything is just on the other side of the Liberty Tunnel, kind of like up a winding hill. It used to be in the Strip District, so you could take public transit to go retrieve your car, but they moved it, and now there's no feasible way to get there via public transit. So you either like have to Uber or get a friend to drop you off. It's all very expensive to get your car out of, but just know if your car disappears and you see that you were in a spot you were not supposed to be, and it's likely that you got towed, call McGann and Chester because they probably have it.
And if you can't stand driving at all, producer Sophia Lowe has many suggestions for the bus system and our light rail. Jacob, I will let you represent Sophia here as the person who probably knows Sophia best.
That's right. Yeah. The bus system in Pittsburgh is pretty decent. I mean, it depends on where you're going and where you live, obviously. But if you're living in the more denser parts of the city or surrounding suburbs, bus system, pretty good. Sophia, has ridden the bus a lot. The T as well is part of that.
Y'all use an app, too, that you like swear by. Sophia's constantly pulling it up.
We both recommend, I would recommend that it's an app. It's just called Transit. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Get a partner who drives you around for the places you can't take the bus or T or walk to. That's Sophia's other tip, I guess.
And then one other tip, if you're into getting around the city by bike like I am, Bike Pittsburgh has this evolving bike map that maps out all the different trails and options around the city. It is super helpful. It's how I figured out that I could pick up a river trail on my way into work instead of staying on main streets the whole time and dodging cars. It is just a great resource, and I would highly recommend checking it out.
Leanne, thank you. I appreciate it. Jacob, thank you for sharing all of your hard-won knowledge with us.
Yeah, no worries. I hope that to the people out there, this might be helping you get around the city easier, whether that's by car or by bus or even by bike.
Yes, happy driving, everyone. Please remember to always give or take a Pittsburgh left.
That is all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. We thank you again, everyone who came out to our 412 Day. You know, you can get all the good swag if you become a CityCast Pittsburgh neighbor. All the info is at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow with more from around the city. We'll talk to you soon.
And to go back to Rialto Street, it is a very unique Pittsburgh experience to the point that whenever people visit me who haven't been to Pittsburgh before, I like to take them on a route that just so happens to go down Rialto Street because I think it's very fun.
You don't warn them.
Oh, no, I mentioned like this is going to be a very unique Pittsburgh experience coming up. And then we just go down Rialto Street because it's like a little roller coaster.